all night. Senators are set for a final vote on Supreme Court nominee Judge Amy Coney Barrett following a marathon session last night. We have a report and analysis. 8 days to go. President Donald Trump was busy on the campaign trail this past weekend. How he and rival Joe Biden are spending their time as the election draws closer. Elevated status. Pope Francis issues a surprise announcement regarding new cardinals in the church. We're in Rome. And dedicated to young people. A diocese in the United States names a retreat center after recently beatified Carlo Acutis. On EWTN News Nightly for Monday, October 26, 2020. Good evening. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Tracy Sable. Tonight is the night Senate Republicans have been waiting for, the final confirmation vote for Judge Amy Coney Barrett to be the next Associate Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court. But it is not coming without a fight. Capitol Hill correspondent Eric Rosales reports now. Eric?
Well, Tracy, here on Capitol Hill, the debate rages on as it did throughout most of the night. Now, senators yesterday gave themselves a 30-hour time limit before taking a final vote, and Democrats used majority of that time speaking out against Amy Coney Barrett. But come tonight, a final vote will take place.
The yeas are 51, the nays are 48.
Sunday, the Senate kicked off the final hours of debate on the nomination of Judge Amy Coney Barrett.
The Republican Party is willing to ignore the pandemic to rush this Supreme Court nomination forward.
Democrats claim Justice Barrett would vote to eliminate the Affordable Care Act, despite her own words.
I, as a judge, have an obligation to respect and enforce only that law that the people themselves have embraced. As I was saying earlier, it's not the law of Amy, it's the law of the American people.
And Democrats criticize the Catholic judge's pro-life views.
Dozens of abortion rights cases are headed towards the Supreme Court as we speak. The stakes could not be higher for women's health than they are right now with this nomination.
Despite Judge Barrett's pledge, she will not legislate from the bench.
I think originalism and textualism, to me, boil down to that, to a commitment to the rule of law.
2 GOP senators had joined with all Senate Democrats to oppose the confirmation. Senator Susan Collins said yesterday, quote, "I will vote against the nomination of Judge Amy Coney Barrett. My vote does not reflect any conclusion that I have reached about Judge Barrett's qualifications. I do not think it is fair nor consistent to have a Senate confirmation vote prior to the election." But in a surprise twist, the other Republican holdout, Alaska Senator Lisa Murkowski, announced,
"The only way to put us back on the path of appropriate consideration of judicial nominees is to evaluate Judge Barrett as we would want to be judged, on the merits of her qualifications. I will be a yes."
As of tonight, we are hearing that Vice President Mike Pence will be presiding over the vote, and he has every right to do so despite 5 of his aides coming down with COVID-19 over the weekend. Now, Democrats didn't want him inside of the Senate chambers, and we're also hearing from a senior White House official that Justice Clarence Thomas will be giving her the oath of office as soon as she is given the okay and given the vote. Tracy?
Okay, thank you so much, Eric. Correspondent Eric Rosales reporting from Capitol Hill tonight. Amy Howe, co-founder of SCOTUS blog, joins me now on Skype to talk more about Judge Barrett's expected confirmation to the Supreme Court. Amy, welcome back. So good to see you again. Judge Barrett's confirmation would give conservatives a 6-3 majority on the Supreme Court. When is the last time that we saw that kind of composition on the high court? And also, could that impact cases before the court?
You'd have to go way back to the 1930s to find a conservative majority that's that solid. And I would expect it to have a really solid effect. You think of all of the decisions that we've seen in the last couple of decades involving 5-4 decisions in which one of the more conservative justices, like more recently Chief Justice John Roberts or Anthony Kennedy or Sandra Day O'Connor, crossed over to vote with the liberals. And now you've got a solid 6-3 conservative majority. And so I expect to see the effects of this majority in cases involving issues like abortion, gun rights, affirmative action, voting rights, probably regulation of the environment. I think the list really goes on and on.
Amy, do we know how soon she could be seated once she's sworn in, and also how significant is that to upcoming arguments?
I think she could probably get started working very soon. Justice Brett Kavanaugh, was confirmed on a Saturday of Columbus Day weekend and took the bench on Tuesday morning to hear oral arguments. She'll get a little bit more of a break because the Supreme Court's not hearing oral arguments this week, but there's a conference on Friday of the justices to decide what cases they're going to take up in the future. And then the justices will be back, not in the courtroom, but hearing oral arguments by telephone on Monday, November 2nd. And I wouldn't be at all surprised to have her be participating in those arguments. And there's a couple of big ones coming up in the November session. We heard a lot during her confirmation hearings about the oral argument, the challenge to the Affordable Care Act. But there's also a big argument before you get to that on November 4th involving the Catholic Social Services and its battle with the city of Philadelphia over whether or not the city of Philadelphia can cut off referrals for foster care to Catholic Social Services, because Catholic Social Services will not work with same-sex couples. And so that is a case on November 4th in which I think that having a ninth justice could very well make a difference.
As you know, there have been questions raised about filling the late Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg's seat so close to the presidential election. Can you talk about what we've seen in the past when it comes to filling Supreme Court vacancies during a presidential election year? And also, how does this compare, and what did the historical record show?
Sure. It's been you have to go back to 1988, the confirmation of Justice Anthony Kennedy, to find another confirmation during a presidential election year. And this one was unusually close to the presidential election itself. Justice Ginsburg died on September 18th. You'd have to actually go all the way back to 150 years to the presidency of Abraham Lincoln to find a vacancy that had occurred that close to a presidential election. In that case, President Lincoln actually waited. It was after the death of Chief Justice Roger Taney to fill the seat. So, it is unusual to have a vacancy this close to an election, certainly.
I mean, we don't have a lot of time, but I do want to get to this last question. As we've seen, Democrats have been opposed to the nomination really since the beginning. As someone who follows the court, what are your thoughts on the increasingly political nature of the process? And frankly, how do you think the public perceives it?
I think the public perceives it as this sort of kabuki dance, much like the senators do, where there's a lot of discussion, but not necessarily learning a lot about the nominees. The idea that people go in with sort of predetermined views. I think that there's been sort of a downward spiral where each side says, well, the other side started it, or the other side was bad last time, so we're going to behave badly this time. It may take more people like Senator Murkowski, and you just had the clip saying we're going to try to salvage the process and move forward to try and restore a little bit more of the nonpartisanship to it.
Well, Amy, we always appreciate your analysis. Thanks so much for coming on. Amy Howe, co-founder of SCOTUS Blog. And coming up later in the show, we talk with Catherine Hadro, host of EWTN Pro-Life Weekly. She joins us to discuss Judge Amy Coney Barrett and the Supreme Court, and also what it could mean in the fight for the unborn. President Donald Trump says don't believe the polls. He says he is going to beat Democratic rival Joe Biden and is counting on a win in Pennsylvania, where he is holding 3 rallies today. White House correspondent Owen Jensen reports.
Tracy, President Donald Trump told voters in Pennsylvania this election is the most important in the nation's history, and it will affect your religious liberty.
We're going to win in Florida. We're going to win in Pennsylvania, I think.
President Donald Trump rallies supporters in battleground Pennsylvania. He warns former Vice President Joe Biden wants to keep the whole country locked down, and in doing so, hurt people's ability to worship.
because the only thing you can do in Pennsylvania is a protest. You can't go to church. You can't pray to your God. You can't be with your pastors, your priests, your rabbis. You can't be, none of that.
And for all the efforts made in protecting unborn children.
And then Biden's going to pack the Supreme Court with radical justices who will shred your Second Amendment and pro-life and so many other things. He will shred it.
Joe Biden tweeted today, "This is the most important election of our lifetimes. Don't wait to make your voice heard. Vote early today." The Democratic presidential nominee travel schedule not nearly as intense as President Trump's, staying near home today in Delaware. But later, Joe Biden plans to hit 6 battleground states in a mix of socially distanced, in-person, and virtual events.
All these crises we're seeing today, all the chaos, this hardship and suffering, it didn't have to be this way.
Joe Biden heads to Georgia tomorrow, and President Trump has many more rallies lined up between today and Election Tuesday. That includes a stop tomorrow in Omaha, Nebraska. Nebraska and Maine both award electoral votes based on congressional district, and in a close race, that could mean all the difference. At the White House, Owen Jensen, EWTN News Nightly.
A reported airstrike on a rebel camp in Syria has killed over 50 fighters. The Syrian opposition is claiming today's attack was carried out by Russia. The rebel camp that was targeted is one of the last training bases run by one of the biggest rebel groups backed by Turkey. The U.S. brokered a ceasefire between Armenia and Azerbaijan yesterday, but it was already violated with shelling this morning. Both sides are accusing each other of violating the truce. This is the third ceasefire that has failed. Fighting flared up within the last month, leaving hundreds dead, including civilians. Armenia and Azerbaijan have fought each other for decades over the disputed region of Nagorno-Karabakh.
Biz kabile devleti değiliz. Biz Türkiye'yiz, Türkiye.
Fiery rhetoric from President Erdogan of Turkey daring the U.S. to impose new sanctions for his support of Azerbaijan against Armenia. Also, the war of words between President Erdogan and French President Emmanuel Macron is growing. Over the weekend, he said President Macron, quote, needed mental health treatment for his attitude to Muslims. President Andrzej Duda of Poland tested positive for COVID-19 over the weekend. The 48-year-old said he feels well and is in isolation. His diagnosis comes as Poland is reporting a huge surge in confirmed coronavirus cases. Also in Poland, protests in favor of abortion have continued since last Thursday's pro-life ruling banning most abortions, and now protesters are targeting churches. Pro-abortion protests broke out again last night in Poland. Angry street demonstrations grew after Poland's constitutional court effectively banned almost all abortions. Some of the protesters reportedly tried to interfere with church services yesterday, but video on Twitter shows groups of Catholics defending the Holy Cross Church in Warsaw against the protesters. Pope Francis elevates 13 church leaders to become cardinals.
Terrò un concistoro per la nomina di 13 nuovi cardinali.
The Holy Father made the surprise announcement during his Sunday address to pilgrims at the Vatican. The cardinals elect include Washington, D.C. Archbishop Wilton Gregory. EWTN Newsroom correspondent Colin Flynn joins us now with more insight. Colin, Archbishop Wilton Gregory will become the first African-American cardinal in the United States. Has the cardinal-elect reacted to this news?
Good evening, Tracy. Yes, indeed, he has. Yesterday, he released this statement. He said, "It is with a very grateful and humble heart I thank Pope Francis for this appointment, which will allow me to work more closely with him in caring for Christ's Church." And as you mentioned, the appointment of Archbishop Wilton Gregory, it's a piece of history within the Catholic Church, as he will be the first African-American cardinal to be elected. Now, Archbishop Gregory is someone who is very much seen as a leader in the Catholic Church in the United States. He was for 3 years the head of the U.S. Bishops' Conference. Before his position now in Washington, he was Archbishop of Atlanta, Georgia. And he's also a man who has been a strong advocate against clerical sex abuse over the past number of years.
In addition to Archbishop Gregory, who else will be given the red hat next month?
Well, Tracy, receiving the Red Hat next month, 13 in total. 2 of them are already in the Roman Curia. That's the name given to the administrative body which looks after the running of the Catholic Church. And those 2 are Mario Grech from Malta. He is the Secretary General of the Synod of Bishops. And also Marcello Samarero from Italy, the prefect for the Congregation of the Causes of Saints. Of course, he recently took over from Cardinal Becciu, who was dismissed by Pope Francis. The other cardinals in the list of 13 come from near and far, here at home in Italy, but also further afield from countries like Rwanda, the Philippines and Chile.
Colin, talk about the significance of being appointed a cardinal in the church, and how often does the Pope actually appoint them?
Well, Tracy, the significance is huge, really, because it means you really are in the running to becoming the next pope, or at least you will have a strong say in who the next pope will be. And in terms of how often a pope can elect new cardinals, there isn't really any set guidelines. It's really at the discretion of the pope. And this is the 2nd year running now that Pope Francis has elected new cardinals. Now, the appointment of these 13 is significant, the number, the age of them, because 9 of them are under the age of 80 and 4 of them are over the age of 80. Why is that significant? If you're under the age of 80 and you're elected a cardinal, it means that you can vote in the next conclave. You can vote for a future pope. If you're over the age of 80, you don't have any rights to vote. And it's very unlikely, Tracy, that you would be selected as a future pope because of your age. Unlikely, but not impossible. Remember, as Catholics, we believe that it is the Holy Spirit working through the cardinals when they select a new pope. Now, all eyes are always on which pope elects which cardinals, because the more cardinals that a pope appoints means that the more likely the next pope will be to carry forward their policies, their teachings, and their ethos into the next pontiff. And of these 13 that have been appointed, it brings in total now the number in the College of Cardinals to 232. And of those 232, 128 will be able to vote. Yesterday, after the Angelus, when Pope Francis announced this to the people in St. Peter's Square and people watching all over the world, he said that he wanted the world to pray with him, that these bishops, these new cardinals, would help him in his role as Bishop of Rome, and also for the benefit of the holy people of God.
Well, Colin, thank you so much for that report. Colin Flynn, EWTN Newsroom correspondent. Thanks again, Colin.
Thank you, Tracy.
Coming up, as Judge Amy Coney Barrett moves closer to the Supreme Court, we examine what it means for the pro-life movement. Judge Amy Coney Barrett is poised to succeed the late Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg to become the 115th Justice of the Supreme Court. Joining me now to talk more about the significance of Judge Barrett's expected addition to the High Court is Catherine Hadro, host of EWTN Pro-Life Weekly. Catherine, welcome back. Always so good to see you. Let's talk about this moment, the confirmation of Judge Amy Coney Barrett to the Supreme Court. What does it mean for the pro-life movement?
Tracy, I cannot overstate the significance of this day. I think Senator Lindsey Graham, the chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee, said it well the other week during confirmation hearings that this is historic. This is the first time a pro-life woman who embraces her faith has been nominated to the court. She is going to have a seat at the table. And I think this signals to other pro-life and Catholic women that their voice is relevant and significant. When it comes to future rulings on abortion, we'll all be closely watching to see what a Justice Barrett would mean. But any suggestion that because she is Catholic and because she supports the Church's teachings on life would mean she would not be fair or impartial, that's simply not true. Justices are not result-oriented. But the fact that she is a constitutionalist seems to imply that she does respect the constitutional right to life, and that is something that pro-lifers are celebrating.
Catherine, what impact do you think this is going to have on the presidential election?
One issue to look out for related to Barrett's confirmation today is this notion of court packing, of adding on more than 9 justices to the Supreme Court to change its ideological makeup. Joe Biden has said that he is not a fan of court packing, but it is something that he is open to, especially given Barrett's confirmation. It's something we're hearing more and more from Democratic lawmakers, even moderate Democrat lawmakers. So as significant as today is, with Justice Barrett going to the Supreme Court, and I don't want to lose sight of that, her voice would carry less weight if a President Biden were to add more justices who have a differing jurisprudence. But Tracy, just a few days ago, a new poll came out, a Marist poll, which revealed this is very unpopular with American voters. 60% of Americans and 1/3 of Democrats oppose court packing. So this could be an issue that drives voters to the polls.
Catherine, what's the response been from the abortion lobby towards Judge Barrett? What are we hearing?
Well, it's not surprising, but it is still disappointing that the abortion lobby is protesting Judge Amy Coney Barrett going to the Supreme Court. They're really painting this dystopian picture of what a Justice Barrett would mean. Last week, we saw the Women's March in D.C. protest Judge Barrett, a women's march protesting a woman's success. You just cannot make this up. But we're also hearing from a lot of celebrities commenting in pop culture about Judge Barrett and the future of Roe v. Wade. Stevie Nicks, rock star Stevie Nicks of Fleetwood Mac fame, just the other week gave a heartbreaking interview to The Guardian in which she said she would not have gained success if it were not for her own abortion. And Tracy, that was heartbreaking to hear, because I think today, with Amy Coney Barrett going to the Supreme Court, that squashes the lie that abortion is ever necessary for success. Here we have this woman, a Catholic mother of 7, achieving the highest level of success in her field. Success can take many forms, but it never requires an abortion. And I just wish more women, all women, were celebrating this great achievement today with Judge Barrett going to the Supreme Court.
No, Catherine, thank you so much for coming on. Always great talking with you. And a reminder that you can watch EWTN Pro-Life Weekly Thursdays at 10 p.m. And for other airing times, visit our website, EWTN.com.
Thanks, Tracy.
Up next, Pope Francis has a sit-down meeting with a leader from Europe. We'll explain. Pope Francis meets the Prime Minister of Spain at the Vatican.
Es una forma muy alta de la caridad y del amor.
They met for a half an hour over the weekend discussing the coronavirus pandemic, immigration, and European integration. The Holy Father expressed his sadness when countries give way to ideologies that, quote, deform the concept of a homeland. The Bishop of Camden, New Jersey, has dedicated a youth center to Blessed Carlo Acutis. At a ceremony earlier this month, Bishop Dennis Sullivan inaugurated the Blessed Carlo Acutis Youth Center. He was joined by dozens of students and the president of Holy Spirit High School. And a Catholic high school named after the founder of the Knights of Columbus is getting ready to celebrate his beatification. Father Michael McGivney is scheduled to be beatified this coming Saturday. The faith director at Father McGivney Catholic High School in southern Illinois says his care, particularly for widows and orphans, is a constant reminder that the most vulnerable need help. And you can learn more about Father McGivney's beatification by going to our sister publication, CatholicNewsAgency.com. And we thank you for watching tonight. For the entire EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Tracy Sable. Good night and God bless.